Welcome back. Today we're going to learn how to estimate sums and differences with mixed numbers. Now, a mixed number is just a whole number with a little bit more added in. So it's more than a whole, but it still has a fractional piece with it. Let's look at numbers 3 through 7 as some examples to learn this skill. It says round to the nearest whole number. So let's look at number 3, 2 and 3/4. Now the first thing I need to think of is 2 and 3/4, is 3/4 more than half? Is 3/4 more than half? Yeah, it is. So that means my whole number is going to round up to the next whole number. My whole number will round to 3. 1 and 5/7. 5/7 is what I'm looking at first. Is that more than halfway? Is 5/7 more than halfway to the whole number, to having a full 7/7? Yeah. So that's going to round my whole number up to what number? If it's 1 and 5/7, what will it round up to? Right, 2. 2 and 3/10. Is 3/10 more than half? Is 3 out of 10 pieces more than halfway there? You're right, it's not. So 2 and 3/10 is closest to what whole number? 2 or 3? Yeah, 2. Now, let's put what we practiced up here into some practice down in 6 and 7. Now that we know how to round them, let's add them and subtract them. 2 and 5/9. 5/9. Is that closest to 2 or is it closest to 3? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase my question. 5/9, is it closest to 0 or is it closest to 1? You're right, it's closest to 1. So 2 and 5/9, going back to my original question, is it closest to 2 or is it closest to 3? Yeah, it's closest to 3. 1 and 1/3. Let's look at 1/3. Is 1/3 closest to 1, 1/2, or 0? If you said 0, you would be correct, because it is only 1 out of 3 pieces being used. So, is 1 and 1/3 closest to 1 or 2? Yeah, it's 1, because I only have 1 extra piece being used out of my fraction. So 3 minus 1 equals 2. Now, let's look at number 7. 2 and 4/10 plus 3 and 5/8. Let's look at 2 and 4/10. 4/10, what is that closest to when I'm looking at fractions? Is it closest to 0, 1/2, or 1 whole? It is close to a half, but is it over a half? It's not a half yet, So it's going to round down to 0/10. So 2 and 4/10, is that closest to 2 or is it closest to 3? 2 and 4/10, is that closest to 2 or is it closest to 3? You're right, it's 2. 3 and 5/8. Think about where 5/8 would fall on the number line. Is it closest to 0, 1/2, or 1 whole? Five out of 8 pieces. Is it closest to 0, 1/2, or 1 whole? You're right, it's closest to 1/2. Now, the next question I have to ask myself, if it's closest to 1/2, is it more than 1/2 or less than 1/2? You're right, it's more than 1/2. So, 3 and 5/8, will that round up to 4 or will it stay at 3? I would say 4 because 5/8 is more than 1/2. So 2 plus 4 equals 6. Let's look at 21. Use the recipes to answer the questions. So I have fruit trail mix and traditional trail mix. Estimate how many cups of fruit trail mix the recipe can make. So how many cups? All right. I see 1/2 cup of raisins. So 1/2 plus 3/8 plus 1 plus 1/4. 1/2. When I'm looking at a number line, 1/2, is that closer, will that round up to 1 or will it go down to 0? Yeah, it goes to 1. So I'm going to say 1 plus 3/8. Where would that fall on the number line? What would it be closest to? If your brain is saying it's close to 1/2, you need to ask yourself, is it more than 1/2 or less than 1/2? If it's less than 1/2, what would it round to? Right, 0. They already give me a whole number here. 1 plus 1/4. 1/4. What would 1/4 round to? 0, 1/2, or 1 whole? Zero, 1/2, or 1 whole? If you said 0, you are correct, because it is only one piece being used. So 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 0 equals 2 cups. So the fruit trail mix makes 2 cups. B, estimate how many cups of traditional trail mix the recipe can make. So now I'm looking at the traditional trail mix. I'm going to do my estimations right here because I don't have enough space in the space provided. So 1/3 1, 1 3/4, 1. I'm going to leave my whole numbers alone because they're already whole. I don't have to do anything to them. 1 1/3. 1/3 rounds to what? Right, 0. So 1 1/3 rounds to 1 or 2? Right, 1. 1 3/4. 3/4 rounds to a whole, a half, or a 0. Right, 1. So 1 3/4 rounds to 1 or 2? Right, 2. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So it's about 5 cups. Now, estimate how much trail mix you would have if you made both recipes. So 5 cups plus 2 cups equals 7 cups.